Okay, we are perceiving that our customers, other distributors like us, and also our suppliers, they are all struggling with the same customer sustainability requirements as we do. It seems really that they are passed on upstream along supply chains, like a domino effect, and it also seems that sooner or later all of us will be affected of these requirements. So this is the reason why we thought to share this information with you. And yeah, to start with, I would like to just give some global context to embed our learnings, and give an answer to why the domino effect have arisen, why sustainability requirements are passed on upstream along supply chains. First of all, let's look at our planet. Scientists have found 9 boundaries that define the stability of our planet's ecosystem, the so-called planetary boundaries. These boundaries are, for example, climate change, biosphere integrity, which is about biodiversity, land use, and also the novel entities, which is about pollution by plastic and chemicals and so on. So 9 boundaries. And as you can see, there is a safe operating space within these boundaries, which is green. And actually 6 of the 9 boundaries have been exceeded already. Sometimes, or in some cases extremely, you see the red areas. And this means the stability of our planet's ecosystem is not really safe anymore. Or in short, the global health is seriously weakened, which is man-made. And I'm afraid this might become even worse as the human population is growing enormously. Only in the next 25 years, there will be 2 billion more people living on our planet, 2 billion, which is 20%, with all their needs for a healthy life, like food, water, shelter, clothing, and so on. And for this, again, renewable resources are required, and this will stress even more the planetary health. And we, the humanity, we depend on the planet. So this is one of the reasons why the United Nations have agreed on 17 Sustainable Development Goals in their so-called Agenda 2030. And here the idea was to actually address all the environmental but also social challenges the humanity was facing. That was back in 2015. Yeah, nowadays we are still facing the same challenges. Unfortunately, we are really far away from achieving the goals. However, part of the commitment was in this Agenda 2030 was to translate the goals into national legislation to make sure to achieve the goals, which is nowadays even more important than before. And this is what happens in Europe through the European Green Deal. Here, many laws have been adopted or are about to be adopted to drive goals like achieving climate change, preserving Europe's natural capital through a biodiversity strategy, for example, driving the transition to a circular economy, etc., etc. And last but not least, financing the transition as a whole. And let's have a look at this finance topic. Part of the sustainability finance agenda is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. This directive, the CSRD in short, is there to promote ESG transparency in the economy and to utilize the capital market as a lever for sustainability. So gradually, more than 50,000 companies operating in the EU are or will be affected by this CSRD, and this means they have to report or they have to disclose their most relevant impacts on the environment and the society, and also how they address these. And for this, they must follow certain standards. There's so-called European Sustainability Reporting Standards, short ESRS. And this is the spreadsheet you are seeing here. And behind each standard here, there are loads and loads of details, hundreds of data points they will have to report on. And as the affected companies not only have to report on their own operations, but also on their upstream and downstream value chain, at the end of the day, all companies in our economy will be affected by the CSRD, at least indirectly. This is because we, as a supplier of a company that is affected, we will be asked by this company, by our customer, to provide the data he needs for his reporting, and he relies on our data because his ESG transparency depends on that. The financial rating depends on that, and this is just apart from the legal obligations because he has to fulfill with this reporting. So here's actually the first domino effect. ESG transparency is becoming really existential for all companies, whether it is to fulfill one's own legal obligations and to show best performance for a good financial rating, or whether it is to meet one's customers' demand. And apropos customers' demand, according to a recently conducted research, 18 out of our INPACS top 20 customers, so 90%, say that they already have sustainable procurement ambitions for their supply segment in place. And amongst these, 4 say they have linked remuneration to ESG factors, and 3 say they even pay special attention to sustainability in tenders. So from our perspective, a clear indicator for the domino effect. I think there's no need to emphasize that once a tender with ambitious ESG criteria is published and on the go, it's too late to react for a supplier to participate in the tender. So better prepare. The corporate impact on climate change is generally one of the topics companies must report on in the context of the CSRD. So let's have a deeper look at the climate-related domino effect. First of all, companies affected by the CSRD must create a greenhouse gas balance, so to define their actual impact on climate change. And what you see here are the different greenhouse gas categories defined by the so-called Greenhouse Gas Protocol Standard. This is a standard that is generally used for climate reporting or for creating a climate balance. And next to the emissions from own combustions in Scope 1 and those related to purchased energy in Scope 2, also, the emissions from upstream and downstream processes are included in here on the left and on the right, the Scope 3 emissions. And if we look at these, it becomes really complicated to get data. It's a very challenging thing. So the consequence is that companies query the data from their business partners. The end customer gets products from its service provider, the FM company, for example. So he would request the relevant data, the emissions data from the service provider. The service provider requests us, the distributor. We might need information from our manufacturers, and again, the manufacturers from their raw material suppliers. So here we see the domino effect. Emissions data will be requested upstream along the entire value chain. So in any moment, you might be requested to provide emissions data to your customer wherever you are in the value chain. So this might come like this. Within INPACS, we also see that more often there are requests, especially regarding product-related emissions. Here our customers ask for product carbon footprint data, and as this topic is especially scientific and complex, There will be a separate presentation just on this topic. If you're interested, make sure you don't miss it. Yeah, now once transparency on these upstream emissions is given, the question is how to reduce upstream emissions. This is outside our own operations, so our influence is limited. So the legitimate answer for many, many organizations is oblige their suppliers to reduce emissions. Because in consequence, indirectly, one's own upstream emissions will be reduced accordingly. So here again, we find the domino effect. Building companies will oblige the service providers will oblige the distributors, the manufacturers, and so on. So a real domino effect. Now the question is, how does it really happen practically? Some companies request their suppliers to disclose their carbon management through the CDP rating. CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, is acknowledged as the gold standard of environmental reporting, with the richest and most comprehensive set of requirements on corporate climate action. And only companies with a holistic and ambitious climate management are able to get an A rating. This is really, really difficult. So a CDP rating is a good instrument to manage upstream emissions, and probably it will become one of the standard requirements of many companies, at least for their most relevant suppliers. A science-based target is another criteria that companies increasingly implement as a requirement for steering their upstream emissions. The Science-Based Target Initiative is an NGO that verifies the ambition level of corporate carbon reduction targets in respect to the Paris Agreement. So it actually helps companies assess the credibility of their suppliers' climate action. We found out that 12 out of our 20 INPACS top customers have already a science-based target in place or are in process of creating one, often including commitment for scope 3 emissions, so affecting us, and the same for our suppliers. Nearly half of those supporting our booth here at the Interclean, they have set or committed to a science-based target already. And accordingly, within INPACS, some members are also preparing such a target. For us, a firm indicator for a trend becoming more and more relevant for supply chains in our market segment. We are sure companies more and more often implement a science-based target as a standard requirement, again, at least for their most relevant suppliers. The good thing is, as many of the INPACS suppliers have already set a science-based target, the reduction of our joint upstream emissions here is on a good way. The domino effect of requirements along the supply chains also refers to social topics, human rights, for example. And here again, regulation is the main driver. The Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, or short CSDDD, how we say, has just been adopted by the European Parliament and affects about 5,400 companies. And these companies will have to report on how they avoid, mitigate, or negative impacts on human rights in their value chain. So this means in their own business as well as to some extent in their supply chains. And this is above all time consuming and requires a big organizational effort. Just to name two of the biggest challenges for affected companies, according to a recent study regarding the respective German regulation, which is in force already. So in consequence, 84% of the surveyed companies rely on respective software solutions, primarily from third-party providers. Amongst these providers are EcoVadis, SEDEX, Integrity Next, just to mention some. The list here is not exhaustive. These software as a service providers What they do is they bundle supplier information and provide it to its customers in a structured and easy way, so to help them manage their legal obligations. And thanks to a usually integrated artificial intelligence, these software solutions also send alerts in case of suppliers' violations of law or any other incidents or relevant news. So you, as a supplier of a customer using the software, you become really, really transparent. And what we see is that at the end of the day, customers will not expect only their suppliers to participate in such supply chain due diligence assessments, but they increasingly will set even low supply chain risks as standard requirement for cooperation, because they can. They have the sufficient transparency to demand this through these software providers. For us, another upcoming and really severe domino effect along the supply chains. Let's have a look again at some real data for our specific market segment. According to a stakeholder survey we conducted in March this year, to this regard, especially 45% of the 85 participating companies have a supply chain risk assessment in place, and another 30% have it planned. So even in our market, it seems to be a very, very actual topic for the majority of the companies. And moreover, 41% say that they participate in assessments because it is a customer requirement, and 29% even say it's relevant for tenders. So to draw the conclusion again, all companies along the value chains in our market, all companies will have to meet sophisticated sustainability-related supply chain requirements, regardless whether they are small, medium or big companies, and regardless whether they are directly affected by the respective legislation. It has really become existential to prepare for this. Let's have a look again at the increasingly significant sustainability requirements. So as a summary, ESG transparency is a question of legal compliance and access to financial resources for a customer. Providing emissions data for your customers' upstream processes is a new requirement you will sooner or later be confronted with anyway. Reducing your own emissions and proving it through CDP rating or a science-based target seems to become a procurement standard too, apart from your intrinsic motivation to reduce emissions, I would say. And last but not least, participating in supply chain due diligence assessments and showing low supply chain risks become a fundamental criteria for cooperation. And again, this refers to any size of company. The trend does not consider the possibilities and resources of an organization. So better prepare now. But be also aware of the good news. If you make sustainability part of your corporate strategy, it harbors also opportunities. These are the good news. Early birds ensure customer loyalty. You enforce your competitiveness in tenders. You secure not only access to financial resources, but might also benefit from the best financial conditions. And by anticipating legal changes, you secure your long-term existence on the market. So it's about your own sustainability as a corporation. So think about it. Are you ready for the sustainable domino effect?